Hey guys, Mrs. Spurlock here. Now, I know last week I had some videos that you guys watched that someone much better at making videos than I am made, but I really want to be able to lecture, so I'm going to try to make some lecture videos. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll be fun and easy and an enjoyable thing, and maybe it'll be awful and I'll never do it again. No. A few things I want to cover before we talk about Chapter 5, Lesson 3. The first one is office hours. If you are not already aware, my office hours for 7th grade are 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Wednesdays. You can find my Zoom meeting ID on my webpage. The next thing I want to tell you guys about is that Dr. Quigley and I will be doing an off-topic Friday Zoom meeting. That will be April 10th at 2 p.m. and you'll just go to my Zoom meeting ID to get there. So don't miss it. It should be fun. If you have some questions that you'd like us to answer for Off-Topic Friday, please submit them via email to the email on your syllabus. And then the last thing I want to say is this is unusual, uncharted territory for all of us. Please do not stress out. Do not give yourself a hard time, and be sure you come to me when you have questions, and I'll help you out. Okay, so let's dive into Chapter 5, Lesson 3. Now, as we usually do, we're going to start with our two big questions for Chapter 5, Lesson 3. The first one is, how can mutations affect an organism? Let's see if I get fancy enough to put text in my videos. All right. And the second is, how is cancer related to mutations in the cell cycle? It's a little bit longer. Look at it. Wow. All right. Now, what we need to remember going into Chapter 5, Lesson 3 is that when DNA is coding for things, a lot of it is coding for types of proteins. And when there is a mutation or a change in a nitrogen base, you can end up with the wrong amino acid. And if you think about it, using the wrong amino acid means you're going to make the wrong protein. It's like trying to build something out of Legos and using the wrong Lego in one spot. It's all going to fall apart. You know, it's not a good plan. A mutation is any change in the DNA of a gene or a chromosome. Hi guys, Mrs. Spurlock from a different time here. So something that I forgot to mention right here is that mutated cells are only passed on to offspring if the mutations happen in sex cells. So remember that none of our somatic cells or body cells get passed on to our offspring. Only our gametes get passed on to our offspring, and those are sex cells. If a mutation happened in like a skin cell or a lung cell, that would not be passed on to the offspring, but if it happens in a sex cell, it can be passed on to the offspring. All right, that's all. Now, the mutations we are going to talk about involve changing a single nitrogen base. Okay, there are 3 total types of mutations that we're going to talk about. And if you look at your notes, you'll see that we have an original strand of DNA that consists of, on the left-hand side, 3 thymines followed by 3 cytosines. Now, if that's our original strand, then the mutation that has to happen to get to the strand exactly to its right, TTTCC, all right, we're missing a 3rd C. One nitrogen base, or a pair of nitrogen bases, has been completely deleted from the strand. That's why this type of mutation is called a deletion. Now, to get from your original strand to the 2 strands over, we'll notice that we went from TTTCCC to now we have TTTGCCC. We're not missing any T's, we're not missing any C's, so we know that nothing has been deleted, but suddenly we have this extra nitrogen base. This type of mutation is called addition. And then in our last type of mutation that we're going to discuss today, we have TTTCC. So we have 1 fewer C and an extra T. What has happened here is that one nitrogen base has become a different nitrogen base, or it's been substituted. All right, and so this type of mutation is called a substitution. And that is it for question number 1. How can mutations affect an organism? You can totally change a protein that's being made by changing a single nitrogen base. It's pretty crazy, right? All right, and for big question number 2, how is cancer related to mutations and the cell cycle? So the first thing we need to talk about is, what is cancer? All right, cancer is a disease in which cells grow and divide uncontrollably. Some kind of mutation has happened in their DNA, and the mutation occurred at a place that would tell the cell when to grow and divide. Something has gone wonky, and this cell is just growing and dividing like crazy, uncontrollably. In Arizona, we have a kind of unique problem. Well, actually, you know what? It's not that unique. We have a lot of sunshine, and we have a lot of people doing a lot of stuff in sunshine. And we know that the UV radiation that comes from the sun damages skin cells. All right, so a pretty important life skill could be knowing how to calculate the amount of SPF you should be using.
In order to figure out how much time we can go between reapplying sunblock, there are 2 pieces of information that we need. The first piece of information is the SPF, or sun protection factor, in the sunblock that we're using. The second piece of information that you need to know in order to confidently calculate this is the amount of time that you would typically burn without sunblock. So we're going to do 2 examples, and you will need to know how to do each of these moving forward. So in our first example, we're just given the amount of time someone would burn and the SPF they're using, and we just need to figure out the number of minutes between applications. So if our friend Susie gets a sunburn in 10 minutes, then how long can she go between applications if she's wearing SPF 15? What we do is we multiply sun protection factor 15 by amount of time that she would burn without SPF times 10. And what we get is 150, and the unit for this is minutes. Okay? So the next example we're going to do, we have to give, oops, not a question mark, I meant to put an exclamation point there, 150 minutes. In the next example, we're going to go over how to give an exact time that someone would need to reapply. So we know that Susie's putting on SPF 30, so I'm going to put 30 right here. And this is the same Susie from before, so she burns in 10 minutes. So we're going to multiply that by 10. In this time, we get an answer of 300 minutes. But that's not our final answer. When? We want to know, when should she reapply her SPF? So if we start at 9 a.m., we need to go 300 minutes forward, okay? Plus 300 minutes. Ooh, I don't want minutes, I want hours. Okay? So I'm gonna convert 300 minutes into hours. And the way that I'm gonna do this is just by counting the number of minutes per hour until I get to a number that is greater than 300. So 1 hour equals 60 minutes. 2 hours is 120 minutes. And then we've got 3 hours is 180. 4 hours is 240. And 5 hours is 300. Now, if you don't want to do it that way, I'm going to teach a different way, and this might be more difficult or easier for you. Just stick with me. I've got 300 minutes, and I want to get it into hours, so I'm going to multiply it by some number that gives me hours over minutes. So in 1 hour, I know that I have 60 minutes, okay? And I also know that my final answer will be in hours because these 2 are going to cancel. I just happen to know that 300 divided by 60 is 5 hours. So feel free to use either of these methods. I'm not going to give you any questions that are so difficult that you can't just use this method right here, okay? Now, 5 hours from 9 a.m. is going to be, plus 5 hours, is going to be 2 p.m. And that would be our final answer.
So be able to do that for things like quizzes and tests, okay? Make sure you visit me during office hours if you're having a hard time with that. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about are the kind of overall steps that cancer can take. Cancer begins when a cell is mutated and starts growing and dividing uncontrollably. Obviously, if it's dividing, it's making more cells that are also growing and dividing uncontrollably. The next thing that happens is that a tumor is going to form. A tumor is a mass of abnormal cells that develops from these uncontrollable growths and divisions of the cancerous cell, of the mutated cell. Now, if the cells continue to divide and get large enough to enter the bloodstream, sometimes cancer cells will enter the bloodstream and move to a different part of the body. There are a lot of really sophisticated ways that doctors treat cancer in 2020. We're just going to talk about a few of the more basic strategies to treating a disease like cancer. The first one is going to be surgery. If a tumor exists and it's in a place that's not exceedingly dangerous to operate on, the tumor will just be surgically removed. However, sometimes a tumor will be near something that is extremely dangerous. So if it's really close to a large artery, maybe a doctor doesn't want to perform surgery on that, especially because they can use radiation. Now, when radiation occurs, strong, high energy beams are being sent to the tumor. It's not a perfect system, right? And then the last way that we're going to talk about is called chemotherapy. During chemotherapy, a doctor will prescribe a certain chemical to be either put into or taken by the patient. These chemicals tend to kill the immune system because the immune system plays a large role in allowing cancer to spread throughout the body. And these are also the kinds of people that you maybe have heard of recently as immunocompromised. Somebody who has been through cancer treatment involving chemotherapy often has a weaker immune system than the people around them, and they're more susceptible to diseases like the one caused by the coronavirus. So just a little bit of relevant information for you guys in your Chapter 5, Lesson 3 lecture today. That's going to wrap it up. If you guys have any questions, I'll see you during office hours. Don't hesitate to email me, and make sure you mark your calendars for April 10th at 2 p.m. All right, bye guys.